A three-stage heavy-lift rocket that can carry the Chinese to the moon is being developed by China. The maiden flight of a two-stage variant for low Earth orbit might happen in 2026. What will be the size of these rockets? Is China considering fully reusable heavy-lift rockets? And is China planning to go to the moon or even possibly Mars? Stay tuned to find out all the answers. First up, what is the Chinese space program? The China National Space Administration is in charge of China's space program, CNSA. Several decades passed until the first Chinese crewed space mission was launched, when Yang Liwei's successful 2003 journey on board Shenzhou 5 marked the culmination of an accelerated program of technological advancement. China is now the third nation to successfully send people into space on its own. By the end of 2022, a permanent Chinese space station will be operational, in addition to crewed trips to Mars, the Moon, and other planets to investigate the solar system and other planetary systems. Before the 1957 launch of Sputnik, China started investigating rock technology, but it wasn't until 1970 that the nation launched its first satellite into orbit. More than 400 missions have been launched by China since that time, and nearly all of them have utilized the Long March Changzheng family of rockets. The Shenzhou 9 mission was launched by the China Manned Space Agency on June 16, 2012. Its three-person crew, which included Commander Jing Haipeng, Major Liu Wang, China's first woman in space, launched from Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center in the Gobi Desert, close to Mongolia. On June 18th, they made a successful docking with China's Tiangong-1 space laboratory. Now, for China's Starship program, China's space program launched its first astronaut into orbit in 2003. It earned the position of the third country to do it as an independent nation, after the former Soviet Union and the US. It landed robot rovers on the moon and set one on Mars last year. China plans to collect samples from asteroids close to Earth in a few years. By 2030, it hopes to have dispatched probes to Mars and Jupiter to gather samples, as well as placing its first astronauts on the moon. Chinese state media Xinhua expressed that at least 300,000 people have worked on China's space projects, almost 18 times as many as currently work for NASA. With an initial budget of 2 billion won, $300 million, 240 million pounds, the Chinese National Space Administration was established in 2003. Next up, what is the Tiangong space station? China launched the first module of its Tiangong, or Heavenly Place, space station last year. By the end of the year, it intends to add more modules, like the Mengshan Scientific Lab. It will launch the Zhunshan Space Telescope the following year. This will approach the space station closely and dock there for maintenance and refueling. Tiangong will be self-sufficient in terms of power, propulsion, life support, and living space. It has high aspirations for Tiangong and anticipates using it to take the position of the ISS, which will be shut down in 2031. Because US law forbids its space agency, NASA, from sharing its data with China, Chinese astronauts are not allowed to travel to the ISS. So, does China aim to reach for the moon and even Mars? In a few years, it plans to collect samples from asteroids close to the Earth. It plans to send probes to collect samples from Mars and Jupiter by 2030, as well as send its first astronauts to the moon. For various human spaceflight missions, China is exploring and creating new vehicles, including a new methane fuel launcher that was ostensibly inspired by SpaceX, based on developed technologies, a winged space transportation system, and a fully reusable and inexpensive two-stage methane-liquid oxygen launcher. China is developing a new generation of reusable launch vehicles for missions to low Earth orbit, LEO, and beyond. This work mission is inspired by SpaceX's Starship system concept. Wang Xiaojun, president of the China Academy of Launch Vehicle Technology, CALT, a significant state-owned rocket manufacturer, introduced the idea during a keynote lecture. "We are doing the research on a manned launch vehicle powered by LOX methane propellant," Wang said proudly, through a translator at the International Symposium on Outlook and Cooperation on Near-Earth Orbit Human Spaceflight, February 17th. The International Astronautical Federation, IAF, the Chinese Society of Astronautics, CSA, and CALT organized the event with the hope to unveil China's space mission. The relevant slide appears to show the use of a gas generator engine, as opposed to Starship's staged combustion Raptor engine, which are more intricate but also more potent. The work on the launcher is in the research stage, and most likely does not reflect a finalized idea or an approved proposal. Even though the graphics are reminiscent of systems being researched in the United States, there was no timetable given for the initial rollout. Now, is China considering fully reusable heavy-lift rockets? By 2035, the fully reusable version might be ready. China's launch vehicle vehicle makers seem to be creating a fully reusable version of the Long March 9 Super Heavy Lift rocket required for future mega projects. Last year, the Chinese government gave its blessing to the continued construction of the Long March 9 Super Heavy Lift launcher. By 2030, the long-anticipated expendable launcher is expected to be ready for use, paving the way for Chinese mega projects like the International Lunar Research Station. The enormous rocket will consist of 3 stages and 4 side boosters, with the first stage and boosters utilizing kerosene and liquid oxygen propellant mix. 26 clustered 200-ton thrust megalox engines would power the first stage of the 10.6-meter diameter launcher. 150 tons of payload to low Earth orbit, 65 tons to geosynchronous transfer orbit, or 50 tons for trans-lunar injection would be its payload capacity. Performance benefits, including a decrease in soot generation and coking for reuse, are provided by methane-liquid oxygen. The plans similarly adopt the fuel to SpaceX, Blue Origin, and United Launch Alliance. Chinese commercial launch companies Landspace and iSpace have been producing methane-liquid oxygen launchers in past years, in collaboration with the Military-Civil Fusion National Strategy that facilitates the transfer of restricted technologies. Landspace is looking forward to launching the methalox Zhuku-2 shortly from Jiuquan Spaceport. Competitor iSpace is also preparing to conduct hop tests with the methalox first stage test article for its reusable Hyperbola 2 rocket at Jiuquan. The original disposable Long March 9 is anticipated to be around 103 meters long, have a 10-meter diameter core, and weigh 4,140 metric tons at liftoff. It will be able to lift 140 tons to low Earth orbit or 50 tons for trans-lunar injection. So, what would be the possible size of China's Starship? The original disposable Long March 9 is expected to be around 103 meters long, have a 10-meter diameter core, and weigh 4,140 metric tons at liftoff. It will be able to lift 140 tons to low Earth orbit or 50 tons for trans-lunar injection. Now, hold your breath and cross your fingers as China, the Asian superpower, has launched a 5-year study to explore the prospect of building the biggest spacecraft the world has ever seen. It's about ambition, long-term thinking, and instilling a sense of purpose. Such long-haul thinking does not fit in well with shorter-term Western thinking, which might mistakenly dismiss this as propaganda, says space writer Brian Harvey, author of the book China in Space. Certainly a remarkable achievement. Without a question, China has recently made significant progress in space exploration. It has become the 3rd nation, after the USA and Russia, to return lunar rock samples to Earth for processing. It has also successfully landed a rover on Mars, an accomplishment that had previously only been accomplished by the USA. Harvey points to a Chinese report published in 2009 called Roadmap 2050. The report mentions China's plans to become the world's leading spacefaring nation by the middle of the century. The horizon to Chinese spaceflight is not years or decades, but half-centuries, he says. In other words, rather than being a proclamation that China plans to start building, this most recent news represents the start of China thinking about how to build such a spaceship in the future. Finally, why does China want a spacecraft 10 times larger than anything that has earlier been built? The truth is much simpler. It could be access to artificial gravity. A space station that facilitates artificial gravity could help astronauts stave off some of the most destructive outcomes of weightlessness, such as muscle wastage and the loss of bone density. Artificial gravity could significantly improve the crew's health for lengthy space missions to Mars or further. Zachary Manchester, an assistant professor at the Robotics Institute of Carnegie Mellon University, Pennsylvania, commented, "Artificial gravity has been this science fiction holy grail thing for human spaceflight for a century, and the primary way to do it is a large spinning structure," says President Xi Jinping, expressed his ecstasy over the successful implementation of China's space program. He stated, "To explore the vast cosmos, develop the space industry, and build China into a space power is our eternal dream. The space industry is a crucial component of the overall national strategy, and China wants to use it for peaceful purposes. The space sector will make a greater contribution to human advancement, a global agreement on the exploration and use of space, and China's overall economic growth. With the successful launching of China's reusable rockets, it will move further towards the colonization of Mars and could spark a new space race." What do you think of the rockets launching? Will it be successful? Will China fulfill its dream of colonizing the vast cosmos? Make sure to let us know your thoughts down below. Thanks for watching.